What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Big Dog Brett. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share. Very special program for you guys tonight. We are going to be discussing, I don't know why I have this going on, right? That's just weird. We're going to be talking about Georgia picking up the #1 rated player in the nation in Dylan Raiola. And in a few minutes, we're going to have a guest join us here. You guys are familiar with him. We're going to talk about what this means for UGA, the potential impacts that it has moving forward, how this could change the entire landscape of college football. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. Me personally, I really feel like there is a lot to discuss here. The change that's happened between Kirby Smart and Mark Richt, Kirby Smart and other programs in the industry, some that are starting to step up, some that are starting to fall behind, and what that really means for football and the University of Georgia moving forward. So there's going to be quite a bit. We're gonna give our guests a few more minutes here to get ready. See if we can jump on here. One, stand by. #professional. Ready, right? All right, let's see. All right, so let's see what we got in the chat so far. Go ahead and throw your name out here for me if you would. And at the same time, we have been having some problems with the YouTube algorithm here lately. We have not been able to get the type of visibility. I don't know what's going on with the YouTube algorithm, but for some reason, since I don't make a video every other day, it's decided to pretty much delete anything that I try to get out there, not delete, but it certainly doesn't promote it. So the only way I can beat that is if you guys will hit the thumbs up for me and leave a comment after the video if you would be so kind. If you guys see my stuff pop up from time to time, it only takes a moment to hit the thumbs up, and it only takes a moment to like a video. And that's really what helps keeps spreading the channel around for other people to see and view and pick up. So really appreciate you guys' help on that. Only you guys can do it. I can't do it all by myself. And I feel weird liking my own videos. So all right, let's see what we got over here in the chat. The words. Brad Pitt, how you doing, sir? Brad Pitt, not Brad Pitt. If you were Brad Pitt, that'd be weird. Aqua Dog, how you doing? Thank you so much for being here. Texas Rocks, one of our resident veterans. He's been around a long time. So is Zephyroth. He says our QB room is stacked. Go Dogs, and he is absolutely right. Ram Dog, how's it going? Seed Vision, welcome. So much to talk about tonight. Glad you guys are here. James Willoughby, man, he's been around for a long time too. Johnny Red Dot, Ultra Mega Dog, and yeah, I'm sure we've got a few others in here because that's not 19 names, but we appreciate you guys being here. I'm going to go ahead and bring in Keith. Thank you so much for joining the show, Keith. Man, me and Keith sure do talk a lot offline about all of the goings on. I know you can see in the background here, Keith has got the blooper up. He's got the foam chop ready to go, and it looks like Ronald Acuna bobblehead in the background there. How are the Braves doing there, Keith?
They're doing great this year. Probably one of the best starts they've had in quite some time. So everything's looking good. Hopefully it's not the opposite of what's been happening. Usually they start slow and fast. But we're starting fast this year. So looking good.
Was it the 95 World Series that it was worst to first?
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
The whole 90s. Yeah.
Well, while we do love the Braves, today we're going to be talking about Dylan Raiola. Finally, a quarterback name that is easy to pronounce in comparison to some of these other schools like Tua Tagovailoa, DJ Uiagalelei. So nice to have a easy name for us to pronounce. So thanks for that, Mr. Raiola. We really appreciate it. So first off, I want to get your hot take, your first thoughts on what you see whenever you heard, and you heard before I did. You actually sent me the Twitter. What was your first thoughts of hearing and seeing that he had committed to Georgia?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty much like anybody else that you've seen. I mean, it's a huge pickup. I mean, I don't even think you can probably overstate how big of a deal this is for Georgia as far as, and for Kirby. Definitely the biggest person that Kirby has signed at Georgia. And that says a lot, you know. I don't think it was a huge surprise. I think a lot of people, were pretty much thinking that he was going to go with Georgia. I know the crystal ball had him leaning Georgia. And I don't know if you've seen the video of him mic'd up at his high school. I guess it was a fall camp or something. He made a statement that he said "Go Dogs" as he was out there, and I think he said "Go Dogs," and he said it's always been dogs. So, there was a rumor that he's been a silent commit, and that the Georgia coaching staff has known that he was coming for a while. So, but yeah, it's huge. The timing is great. He's going to have his entire senior year of high school to recruit. And it started already. I mean, you see Jeremiah Smith Jr. is already like joking about, looking at Georgia. I mean, you say joking, I'm kind of using air quotes to say joking. But, I mean, he was, Ohio State all the way. And now that Dylan's coming to Georgia, it's going to have to seriously open up some of these guys' eyes as to, is Georgia's a possible location for sure.
Stand by. If you guys can hear me, stand by. I have lost camera feed. So
yeah,
we're
we can hear
you.
Get
this figured out. So stand by, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, we can hear you. Your camera's just froze. Looks like. But yeah, I mean, I think it's huge. It's a huge pickup. It's an interesting angle as far as, I mean, Kirby going after a big time, going after and securing a big time quarterback. And, it's just interesting that it appears for the foreseeable future, we don't have to worry about a quarterback. At Georgia. And I mean, that's something that we haven't been able to say very much lately. So let's look in the chat here. So I'm guessing the people that didn't get Dylan are now saying he's overhyped. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely tough. I mean, all you can do is go on what you can go on, right? I mean, you can see how these guys perform. I mean, he's got all the physical attributes, and he seems to be performing well, out there in Arizona playing college football or high school football. So, it's definitely, he hasn't taken a snap of college football yet. So, you never know what happens. There's been plenty of guys that have been highly recruited and didn't really do much. You don't really have to look too far in the past to see that at Georgia, actually. With JT Daniels and stuff. So, and was it Jacob Eason? So, yeah, you're right. Doesn't really mean anything until he signs. He's already changed. He's already decommitted once and recommitted. But this timing, Coach Kane, the timing for the commitment right now is it's not all that common to see guys flip their recruitment at this point, and after everything that we've seen as far as the potential for him to have been a silent commit. So I think he's been leaning heavy Georgia. I think he's been been a Bulldog for the most part for a lot longer than the public has known. So I don't see him. I don't see him switching at this point. I know that's a homer thing to say, but you're right. It certainly doesn't mean much until he signs. So we'll see how that goes. I'd be shocked if he doesn't. Yeah, I'd be shocked if he doesn't sign with UGA too. I mean, it takes a lot to not go to Nebraska where his dad and stuff played, and then decommitting from Ohio State. I mean, he did that for a reason. So the only thing, I mean, it's very easy, I guess, for other colleges to negative recruit Georgia from a quarterback perspective, I guess. That's, if anybody wants to have a knock on Kirby, that's probably the one knock you can say is, has he really shown that he can develop a quarterback yet? And I know before a lot of people say Stetson Bennett. I'm a huge Stetson Bennett fan. Don't get me wrong. But there's a lot of quarterbacks in college football that could have taken the 2021 and 2022 Georgia football team to a national championship. So let's see. Hopefully BDB can get back. He just texted me and said he's having technical difficulties trying to get back on. So I'll try to hold it. I'm not a professional YouTuber here, so bear with me, but I'll try to hold it until he gets back here. So let's go through the chat here. Can he beat out Jackson Muschamp, though? Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Georgia quarterback room, honestly, going forward. I mean, everything looks like Carson Beck is going to be the QB1 this year. You got Vandergriff said he's staying, which, I was really surprised by that. So, let's see. I think he just texted me again. Let's see what's up. Yeah. But, I was very surprised that Vandergriff decided to stay. And Gunner is going to be around. Now you add in Raiola, and Puglisi is coming. He said he's not going anywhere. He wants to compete. So, I mean, iron sharpens iron. And so, may the best man win. And like I said earlier, our quarterback room for the foreseeable future looks fantastic. I'm assuming not all of these guys are going to stick around, but who does stay should be the cream of the crop. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next few years. But I think the Georgia Bulldog program and us as fans are going to be winners in that quarterback battle. So let's see. You're doing good, Keith. Hey, appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Let's see. But yeah. So what this means for other recruits, coming Georgia's way. I mean, I know, like I said, Dylan's going to have, basically a year to recruit for Georgia, and if you're a top receiver in the country, a top offensive player in the country, a top tight end, seeing what Georgia's done with tight ends lately, that we want to pass to them. We want to get everybody the ball. Georgia's gotta pop up now. It's gotta be one of your, it's gotta be on your radar. So it's gonna be an interesting, an interesting year coming up. I think it's very possible for Georgia to set a record with the 2024 recruiting class. Be very surprised if we don't end up with the number one recruiting class in the country when all said and done, and possibly break a record or two. So I was surprised he stayed. Also, someone's going to transfer. Yes, I 100% believe somebody's going to transfer. I'm not sure who it's going to be, but yeah, come next year. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, this kind of dawned on me now. I think after this year, Carson Beck, somebody correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but I think Carson Beck will still have another year of eligibility. I think he still has his COVID year to play if he wants to come back. So yeah, you look at come 2024, you look at all the guys that we'll have on our roster will be, from a quarterback perspective, it'll be pretty deep. So Muschamp's son, maybe he may transfer out and go play somewhere else, go play JUCO or something, just to be able to play. But you never know about those guys. He may like to just be on the team and be a part of it. Let's see. Murphy attack, so I didn't leave. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely interesting that Brock stuck around. I mean, I'd like to think that this year, with some of the games that Georgia has, that we're going to have an opportunity to get, to get some of these guys some playing time, a lot more than we're typically used to seeing. I hope to see Gunner and Brock take some more snaps, some more snaps during the year. Maybe not meaningful snaps. I hope a lot of the games are put out of out of reach before we see them come in. But but it's nice to have Brock, with the experience as far as being in camp there, just in case Beck is an injury. I mean, you're only one snap away from one of these other guys being the starting quarterback. So it's Georgia's definitely benefiting from Brock sticking around because he's definitely physical. He definitely adds a different dynamic to bringing him in, and we may see some of that. With the fact that he can run and he's kind of a polar opposite of what Carson Beck is going to give you. Georgia you may see some platooning out there, maybe. Very possible. Some third and short situations, might see Brock. Not sure how much we might see Gunner, but I would definitely not be surprised in goal to go situations, third down short situations to see Brock out there. So let's see if I can check on Big Dog here, see what's going on. Bear with me just a second, guys. Let's see. Yeah, speaking of QBs, has Bama found one yet? Yeah. I mean, it's interesting the dynamic with Georgia and Alabama as far as quarterbacks go. You have, Alabama used to kind of do what Georgia has been doing as far as not really having a star quarterback. You basically put talent around the quarterback. You ask the quarterback to go out there and manage the game and not make mistakes and just get the ball to the playmakers, and you win championships. Alabama did that. And Georgia has done that now. Even though Stetson Bennett put up great numbers, and that final drive against Ohio State, for anybody that speaks ill of Bennett and saying that he can't do this, can't do that, just about everything that people said he couldn't do, he did in that come from behind drive against Ohio State. So, I don't have anything bad to say against Bennett, but he is not a superstar quarterback. He's not the quarterback that that you see Alabama trying to go out and get now with Mac Jones and Tagovailoa and these guys. Alabama's going after the big name quarterbacks, and so you see like a shift in Alabama to focus on offense away from defense, and there is some argument. You hear people say that was just out of necessity because Kirby was the one leading that defense, and so Bama had to do what they had to do to stay competitive. They had to switch a little bit back over to the offensive side.
Hey, sorry, we had a pretty much a complete system failure. So right now I'm still trying to get things adjusted. So
yeah,
try to get back as quick as I could. It was just not being friendly.
Well, I just sat here and read chat the whole time. So
well, I had you going on my phone. So.
I tried to keep it going, man.
Yeah, you
did great.
Talking
that much. Not used to talking that much.
I talk to myself all the time. Sometimes I even answer myself. So, all right. So let's. There's an elephant in the room, pun intended, that we have to address. What is the deal with Alabama's quarterback situation? If you were to have told me 5 years ago that Alabama was going to go 9-3 in a season with a Heisman winning quarterback, and the season after that, they're not going to have anybody as a real quarterback, and Georgia's going to be picking up the number one guy in the nation, I would have bet any amount of money on that to not be true. So is the tide really turning for Georgia? Has college football made the transition now? Now, I know there's going to be tons of Alabama fans that are going to jump up and down and say, oh, but Alabama, Nick Saban, 82 titles, whatever it is he's got. And they're going to say, well, but Georgia just recently. Well, Georgia's actually been a pretty solid program for a very long time. and has now taken away pretty much everything you can take away from Alabama, unless I'm missing a mark here. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's basically what we were getting into when you came back. Yeah, I think, I mean, I think Georgia's emergence is definitely hurting Alabama as far as as far as recruiting. I'm not sure if you go back a cycle. I can't remember if Bama went after Gunner and went after Brock. I'm trying to, off the top of my head, remember their recruitment, but I mean, they've definitely, they've definitely, kind of dropped the ball, I guess. I don't think they were very happy with what they saw at spring. So, I mean, so yeah, I definitely think, Georgia, like I said, Georgia's emergence kind of has Alabama scrambling. And I think the QB situation just kind of, manifests itself as the clearest picture of that, so, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean, you don't necessarily, Alabama's going to have studs out there. So, I mean,
Oh yeah,
as long as they can settle on somebody that's going to come. I mean, hell, we just won the national championship with Stetson Bennett. You know what I mean? So, I mean, again, good quarterback, not a great quarterback, great college quarterback. But, if you got somebody that can get the ball consistently out to your playmakers and you recruit great playmakers, which Alabama has those,
right.
I think they'll do fine. It's going to be interesting to see, but
Well, one of the
I think the
things I'm
tide is turning.
yeah.
Pardon the pun.
So what I'm looking at here is Alabama has, for the most part, I would say consistently out recruited Georgia, with an exception of a year here and there. I think the 2020 year was the last year that Georgia out recruited Alabama. And so here we are 4 years down the road. Alabama's picking up, looks to be, 3 or 4 more 5 stars per year than Georgia is every year. Now, after a course of 3 or 4 years, well, if we go back to 2021, Georgia only picked up 4 5 stars. Alabama picked up 13. That's 9 right there. So they're theoretically should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 players, 20 or more plus 5 stars on Alabama's team than what Georgia has recruited. And we're pretty even on the 4 star stuff. My question is that can we finally put to rest now that Kirby Smart can't develop talent? Can we finally put that to bed? Can we finally say that it's not just it's not just the Jimmies and the Joes, right? You got to have the Jimmies and the Joes. I got it. But if you've got a coach like Kirby Smart who has for 2 years in a row outperformed the former pinnacle of college football, Alabama, with less talent. So I think that's what these college players are seeing. I think that is what they want, a different program than Alabama. Not everybody wants to go play for Nick Saban. His style is a little bit different, and a lot of players seem to like what Kirby Smart is doing. So much to the point that Georgia is now able to pull in 5 star quarterbacks. So you could go back and you could say, yeah, Justin Fields was a 5 star. I get it. JT Daniels was a 5 star. I get it. But I don't feel like Georgia was ready for Justin Fields, and I think everybody knew it. And I don't think JT Daniels was really everything that we kind of hoped he would be. And so Georgia really went the road of, well, we're just going to take a walk on and just make him good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of what we were talking about when you were off. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know if you've heard. Did you hear the story that Carson Beck told on the podcast about the forget what game it was, where I'm trying to remember who we were playing back in 2021, when basically they went with Stetson rather than going to Carson Beck when JT was basically hurt. And trying to remember. I think it was like the second or third game of the season that we finally realized that JT Daniels wasn't going to be able to play.
Right.
And Stetson went in and threw for 5 touchdowns or something like that. And
Yeah.
they decided to Munkin and Kirby went with Stetson instead of Carson Beck. And Carson Beck in the podcast said that, that he was angry at the time, but looking back on it, he wasn't ready. And the coach staff saw that. Like, he just wasn't ready. And, he's glad that they went with Stetson because Stetson had the experience. He was able to step right in there and not let the moment get to him and just kind of do what needed to be done to win those 2 titles. So, yeah, I mean, it is an interesting thing to see what happens with quarterbacks at Georgia, because one of the knocks on Kirby that you could have, as I was saying earlier, is developing a quarterback, is keeping a quarterback, particularly a 5-star quarterback. We've had Justin Fields, a 5-star, didn't see any significant playing time. We had JT Daniels, 5-star, didn't see any significant playing time. He had Jacob Eason on a platter when Kirby got hired. That was a Richt recruit, but no significant playing time. So I mean, 5-stars have not flourished at Georgia, even though we've had them on the roster. So I mean, and then you look, I think Carson Beck is a 4-star, right? And then you have Brock Vandegrift, 5-star, sitting behind Carson. So I mean, and so Dylan Raiola is coming in as a very highly rated 5-star. So yeah, I mean, something's got to give, at some point. And so, I think that's probably one of the reasons that Brock stuck around to stay there. I think he believes that, now that if the cards fall where they may, that he's going to be able to get some playing time. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any truth to the not developing quarterbacks. I think it's just been a very unfortunate series of events. JT Daniels come in hurt, Jacob Eason got hurt, and Justin Fields couldn't stick around for one more year. Yeah. If he'd stuck around for one more year, I think he could have took that starting job, but there was no way he was going to start over Fromm after Fromm taking us to the national championship his freshman year. There's just no way. So,
and here's the thing: had Justin Fields stuck around, he probably would have a national championship ring, if not 2.
Very, very possibly could have. Yes.
So very, very there's that, but I don't know that we had the right people in place to get him trained up, but I think we do now.
Yeah, possibly. That's true.
So here's something else I want to share. Right. So here we go. This is Georgia's all-time football recruits. This is the top of the hill, cream of the crop, best you got, best you ever had. We've got Justin Fields at number 1. Justin Fields was a 0.9998, and somehow he was still number 2 nationally. That was the year behind Trevor Lawrence. We know how that turned out for Trevor. Then we have Dylan Raiola, number 1 national, number 1 at position, number 1 in the state, obviously. Nolan Smith, number 1 nationally, and Trenton Thomas, number 1 nationally. Out of Albany, Georgia, by the way. This right here says a lot about Georgia's recruiting efforts in recent years. So we have 1 from inside of the state, 1 from one of our arch rival states, and then 1 from all the way across the country. So Keely Ringo also from Arizona, by the way. So I think that Kirby Smart is doing a really good job of going to wherever he needs to go to get the talent, but also securing quality in state. This guy right here, if you don't know who he is, you really got to go watch some tape on him. He is absolutely incredible. Some places have him ranked even higher than what you see here. He is going to be a name that we're going to talk about for a long, long time. Dylan Raiola, here, hey, what's going on, Colby? What's going on, Alex MLD? One of the things that you're going to notice is that this kind of change creates a trend, right? So this is so pivotal for UGA because this is going to create an influx of 5-star receiver talent. I believe personally one of the reasons Georgia couldn't get the proper receiving talent that we wanted was because they looked around and go, well, who are you playing at quarterback? Well, I'm not going to play for that guy. I mean, and that's evident because the moment that Dylan Raiola announced his decision to come to UGA, there was an immediate response from Jeremiah Smith, who, by the way, scouting reports, not just UGA people saying this, multiple scouts are saying this, that Jeremiah Smith Jr. looks to be one of the best wide receivers that college football has seen in the past 9 or 10 years. Not making that up. Go take a moment and go look. Think about that. He is better than every wide receiver anybody has had on their team in the past 9 or 10 years, potentially. That would be Jamar Chase. That would be Waddle. That would be Ruggs. That would be Devonta Smith. That would be George Pickens. That would be Donnie Mitchell. That would be anybody you can name. Anybody you could name. He's better than they are at that stage in their career. And that guy saying, I think I might be interested in coming to Georgia. Listen, it will take exactly one season of Dylan Raiola playing and doing what he does, provided it all pans out, and you will see the wide receiver talent will show up at Georgia. This may be a wave that is nearly unstoppable. This may end up being where not only does Georgia remain at the top of the mountain, but solidify itself and separate itself from the rest of the field. It seems to be in the past few years here, Alabama's continued to take steps back while Georgia's continued to take steps forward. If something like this happens and it catches momentum, I don't know who's going to catch Georgia in the next 4 or 5 years. But
yeah,
I'm going to say I'm a homer, and that's okay.
Well, I don't see anything happening in the next 4 or 5 years. I mean, the next 4 or 5 years are almost already mapped out, right? I mean, a lot of the guys that are going to be playing for the next 3 years, 2.5, 3 years are already on the roster, right? And so, I mean, you look at, if you pull up a list of, Georgia's 2024 commits, I mean, that class is building out to be one of the greatest classes ever in college football, if not the greatest. They have, I mean, that the class they have, who they have already committed, is crazy. So, and so you go three years out from that. Now you're talking 6 or 7. I mean, this team, Georgia, is going to be relevant in the national title picture for the next 6 or 7 years at the very least, based on the data we have right now in front of us. Yep. That's not even speculating out. Yep. That's just looking at what is sitting on the horizon right now. So,
and for those who don't know, Georgia right now for the 2024 recruiting cycle is currently actively at this moment sitting on 5 5-stars committed right now. 5 4-stars committed right now. There's only one team above Georgia right now, and that's Michigan, and it's because they have 17 commits. Georgia only has 12. Georgia picks up one more player at any level, and they'll certainly cruise back into first place. But Georgia's got a lot more players that they're going to look at picking up. There is,
I mean, Dylan's going to get a couple of guys just from him being on the team himself. Yeah. I mean, that hasn't even started yet.
So the number one guy on Georgia's prospect list is Dylan Raiola. The number 2 guy is Jeremiah Smith, who we've been talking about. The number 4 guy is also a wide receiver, and Mike Matthews. He's a 5-star. Then we're going to have another 5-star and Ryan Wingo.
Yep, and they got Mike Carr already committed out of Colquitt County. That dude's a stud too.
Yep, and so this list is going to continue to get better and better. Nikar, he could still potentially make a 5-star rating. So we'll see how that happens. But some of these guys like Jalen Hayward, he's a safety. He's a 4-star safety. Georgia's going to continue to amp this up, and the more guys that pile on, the more it's going to pile on. So I agree with you 100%. I think this could be a record-setting class like nobody's ever seen. Well, that having been said, to me, when I look at college football in the offseason, there's not a whole lot going on. So when I take the time to sit down and do a video like this, it really says something about the caliber of how big of a wave this can make. I'm going to stop my camera for just a second unless it gets super lagging. This is really bad. It's still lagging a little bit, but not as bad as it was.
Yeah, so you seem good now.
Okay. There's so much opportunity at UGA right now. I do think one of the problems that Georgia is going to face is the same situation that we faced whenever we had Nick Chubb, Todd Gurley, and Keith Marshall and DeAndre Swift all kind of in that mix together near and at the similar to the same time. Because all these guys are so good. Who do you play? And I think we're going to see Carson Beck. I think that Carson Beck is going to play this year, possibly next year, depending on what happens. And then you're going to see Brock Vandagriff. He's going to stick around. Thanks, Colby. He's going to stick around, and you're probably going to see. I think you're going to see Gunnar Stockton go somewhere else once Dylan Raiola shows up, because I really wasn't that impressed with Gunnar at G-Day, and I really thought he would have been further along at that point than he was. Maybe he just had a bad game, but I think he's so close in line with the timeline of where Brock Vandagriff is that if he sticks around, he may waste some opportunity, especially when you got Puglisi and Raiola coming in. So it's going to be a full house for sure.
Yeah, I think Brock is definitely anticipating being the starter in 2024.
If not, it's going to be close. Now, one of the things I do want to bring up that I thought about that we haven't talked about is we have been very, very fortunate with how durable Stetson Bennett is and was, right? So this guy could take shot after shot after shot and stand up and throw the ball and run. I mean, he was just super durable.
He's athletic. Yeah.
And we don't know yet what we've got in Carson Beck. We don't know if he's durable or not.
Absolutely.
We don't know. Now, I have seen some of the stuff that Brock Vandagriff has done in high school, and I know for a fact that guy is durable. I know he is. But it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be fun to find out. I think that what Brock Vandagriff is looking at is that you look at this schedule this coming up year, this is about the most cupcakey schedule Georgia has ever had. You can't really hang that on Georgia because Georgia did try to schedule Oklahoma and a couple other teams, and we were told no. So we had to fill them with what we could get. And, I mean, this is going to be a year where you see Brock Vandagriff probably play a lot in the second half of games. While it would be nice to watch Carson Beck run up the score, I don't think Georgia's going to have a problem running up the score against most of these teams. I think they're going to pull him by the second half. So he'll get to the end of the season. He won't have 5,000 yards at the end of the season. I think he'll probably have around 3,000, and I think Brock will probably have around 1,100 or 1,200 or maybe even 1,500. But it's going to be a wild year this year. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think, man, because I fully anticipated after G-Day, that Brock was going to transfer.
I did too.
Brock Vandagriff was going to transfer, especially when that initial story came out that he was asked about it and didn't really give a clear answer. And then it seemed like he was asked it again like the next day, and he was just like, "Yeah, I'm staying" or whatever. And so I wonder if there was a conversation with the coaching staff that it's kind of what I was talking about again while you were off. I wonder if they've promised Brock some situational plays with him with his legs, like goal to go situations, third and short situations. Put him out there with his legs and let him, just throw that dynamic. I mean, having to deal with a guy that could take off running and is is definitely something you may see Georgia do, and that may be one of the things that kept Brock around. Because I mean, it wouldn't be the promise of cleanup time, because historically Kirby just hasn't really done that. I mean, you look at the past 2 seasons when we've had blowout. I mean, Carson got a little bit of playing time, but not really. The most significant amount of playing time he got this year was a national championship game.
Well, and one of the questions that one of the things that you have to question is, was Kirby Smart really trying to help Stetson Bennett pad those stats so that he could get drafted?
I think he's done that with everybody. I mean, I
that's
think,
what you call a good coach right there.
Yes, sir.
I mean, until they break a leg when you're up by 40, what I mean? But
hey, if you want to pass some stats for your
that's true.
For your quarterback at the university that went back to back.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely
NFL. I feel like that's a good coach.
Yeah, I definitely think Kirby was a Stetson fan for sure. Definitely.
I think the thing that he liked about Stetson is that it gave him an opportunity to look at the rest of the team and go, I don't care if you're a walk-on. If you're good enough, you'll play.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a good recruiting tool.
That's something that you can say to recruits. That's something you can say to players. And there's no replacement for action. And so whenever he would put Stetson out there, Stetson would make mistakes. If we go back to the national championship game against Alabama, that call that I disagree with, that they called a fumble or interception or whatever it is you want to call it. Yeah, pass fumble.
The pass fumble.
I saw that and I went, well, that was clearly either an incomplete pass or an incomplete pass.
But either way,
they said, no, that's a fumble. I was like, I thought the criteria was if the ball goes forward. And the ball went forward like 5 yards.
Yeah.
So it couldn't have been a lateral. Struggling to figure out how it was a fumble. And I'm struggling how to figure out, how did the ball go forward if his arm wasn't moving forward? Somebody help me out with that. So far, even Neil deGrasse Tyson hasn't called me back to explain that. So
either way, that was a Bennett mess up, though, right? I mean, that was a mistake.
Yeah. So he took ownership for it.
Yeah.
He was like, I am not going to let this be what ends me.
Yeah.
Ends my team. No, not happening. And he went out there and he went like 8 for 8, went down the field.
Yeah. The next drive, he was a surgeon for sure.
Yeah.
That was I think that was the play. Was it that drive had the offsides play where he threw the bomb to A.D. Mitchell in the end zone?
Yep. And the cool thing is that everybody remembers the Keeley touchdown. Everybody remembers that interception. That will be forever cemented in history. But the thing that people really need to take note of and remember is that Stetson Bennett got up, dusted himself off, and took his team down the field. And he was ahead on points because of that drive. We were ahead on points.
Yeah.
So
Stetson took over that fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And Stetson goes down the field, puts us up on the scoreboard, and then he says, okay, defense, you go do your job. I just did mine. And the defense sealed the game for sure, but it was Stetson that put us up on the scoreboard. So
yeah,
gotta remember that. Okay. So what's going on, Kobe? What's on your mind, buddy? Thanks for joining the show.
See, I don't know how I see you've been on for about an hour now. Let's just say that. Have y'all talked about Dylan coming into the program and competing with Gunner and Brock yet?
We haven't talked about him competing, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it.
So yeah, I mean, this guy's a stud. I think we all know that. But so was Gunner.
Oh, you're talking about the quarterbacks. I thought you were talking about me, man. Go ahead.
Well, you're a stud too. So we all know that. You're a 5-star prospect, All-American.
Yeah.
All-American. Slob Olympian champion.
Yeah.
We know.
Slob Olympian champion, man. Don't leave that off.
Yeah, I know. You got that trophy in the background. Oh, wait.
you gotta spread the love around sometimes, man. We're the group that we're in. We all need a little bit of love, man.
No, I hear you there. Hey, but what do you think? Like, do you think Dylan's gonna compete? I don't think he's gonna compete. He might redshirt freshman, or do you think he's gonna come in as a sophomore? Like, do you think someone's gonna transfer? What are y'all's thoughts about it?
I'll go real quick. I think what's going to happen is you're going to see Carson Beck this year, and then hopefully he balls out, goes into the draft, and then Brock's going to get his year to play, to lead the team essentially. And either Gunner's going to stick around and try to play the following year, or you may see Gunner transfer. But I think it's going to line up for Dylan to actually compete as a starter his freshman year. I think he very well could.
I think that's a great point. I also think that Dylan Raiola is from District 1, 2, or 3. He has volunteered to enter the Hunger Games. This is what he has trained for all his life. His father was an NFL player for multiple years. His father's best friend are NFL players. This is what this kid is been training for his whole life. Now, I know a lot of these guys they train to become, to potential NFL players, but very few have the ability to call a quarterback like Matt Stafford Uncle Matthew. So I would imagine he's been getting all types of wonderful free training from one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
Under Mike Bobo.
Absolutely. Both of them. So I really think that this kid has an inside track more than any player that we've had come to UGA. I think that here's the thing about Arch Manning. Arch Manning's not that good, and y'all will find that out soon. And I'm not trying to pick on Arch. I'm just telling you. I looked at that guy's stats and I watched that guy play and I went,
Hey, why? Hey, Big Dog Brett, why he went to no camps? Do you know why? Because he's not that good.
It was in the bag, man. It was in the bag. I'm just surprised he didn't go to Tennessee.
Good old Rocky Top.
Yeah. So what Texas rocks, man. I love you, brother, but I'm not trying to pick on you. I'm trying to warn you.
Hey, he's a solid quarterback, but he's not like Peyton or Eli. Let's just be real.
You know what? He might turn out to be, and I hope that he does. But I'm just I don't personally see it. And now I've been wrong about quarterbacks before, but I've learned my lesson on a few of them. But what I've seen about Dylan Raiola is very, very different. This guy is statuesque. He's the 6'3", 220-pound pocket passer, arm like a cannon, can throw it down the field. He can make short plays, long plays. He can put touch on the ball. He can do it all. And he's doing it under the tutelage of Matt Stafford and Mike Bobo for years. They know exactly what camps are the best camps to send their son to because they know the guys teaching the camps. They know the right things to do, the wrong things to do, all that good stuff. So for me, I don't think that it's going to take long before he sees the field.
So what I'm wondering is, do you think we're going to have a Jake Fromm, Justin Fields, exactly like a Gunnar Stockton, Dylan Raiola incident?
No, I don't. And I think that's because Kirby Smart has learned his lesson. And I think that is very evident with the way that he handled the Carson Beck, JT Daniels, Stetson Bennett situation. He played JT Daniels the way that he needed to play JT Daniels to win that game against South Carolina. Nobody knew that JT Daniels was hurt until 3 games after that game.
Yeah.
And me and Keith had conversations that following week, like right after that game. I was like, man, I'm pretty sure JT Daniels was hurt in that game because if you go back and you watch how his mechanics are, how he's actually throwing the ball, he's not putting any core into it. He's just straight arm throwing it. Come to find out, he had a busted rib. So, unless I'm misremembering.
Well, no,
But
if you look back at that game that you're talking about, like he only threw like 3 long balls over the top, maybe 6-7 times, and then slants 6-7 times.
I mean,
Yeah, you
it
could tell
wasn't a
something
ton
was
of
wrong.
passing. It was Georgia's defense that won that game. There was no doubt at all. I mean, JT Daniels, he threw the ball a lot. He threw the ball 30 times. He completed for 22, but he only had 135 yards in passing.
Completed for 22 and only 130? Is that what you said?
135. So I mean, you're basically talking
Wow.
6 yards a pass.
Yeah,
yeah.
Just slants, just basically slants right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go back and watch that game, a lot of his passes were behind the line of scrimmage. It was a lot of dump off stuff. I mean, I remember watching that game. Actually, I wasn't watching that. Well, I kind of was. Me and my wife had taken my son to a concert, and I was sitting on the lawn at the concert with my headphones on and the game on. But I still couldn't hear it because the concert was so loud. So it was so funny, though. I tell you a little story because this is actually kind of funny. If you remember the end of that game, Christopher Smith gets the interception that kind of seals the game, right? It's pretty much the only scoring that happens in the game. I think the game ends up 10-3 or something like that. It's tied 3-3 for a while. Then Christopher Smith returns the touchdown, returns the interception for touchdown.
No, the touchdown happened in the second quarter.
Oh yeah, okay.
Georgia went up by 10 in the third quarter, and then they mustered a field goal there close to the end of the game.
Gotcha.
Not
Okay.
be shut out.
I just remember like at the concert when Christopher Smith got the interception, the crowd cheered like during the concert. Like I'm trying to remember.
Wait, what was the Black Crows? Were you
it was
at?
Black Crows. Black Crows at in Atlanta. Forget what venue we were at, but
Hey, you want me to blow you guys' mind?
Go ahead.
The top receiver in that game for Georgia was Brock Bowers.
Oh, that honestly doesn't blow my mind.
That was before anybody even knew who he was, right? It wasn't really until if I remember correctly, I think it was the Georgia Tech game that year that everybody was like, wait, who is this kid? Because that was the one where he caught the ball over the middle and just split the defenders and like turned on the afterburners. Yeah, I was at the Tech game, and I remember, like, I vaguely knew. I mean, you knew who Brock Bowers was just as a Georgia fan because you had kind of seen the games all year. But I think that Tech game was. I don't have the stats pulled up in front of me, but I think that game was when he kind of emerged on the national scene.
Yeah, and here's the thing: is that no matter what happens moving forward, there is so much talent on this Georgia roster that it's incredible. That this is the most stocked UGA's quarterback room has ever been in history.
Yeah,
we're going to have, provided he signs, you'll have 5-star Dylan Raiola, number 1 in the country, 4-star Carson Beck, 5-star Brock Vandergriff, and 5-star Gunnar Stockton.
And Pugga. Don't forget about Pugga.
Oh, Puglisi. So, I mean, what's going on, VicTube? It's one of my favorite YouTubers right there. Go check him out. Go check out VicTube. If you ain't signed up for VicTube, what's wrong with you? Go sign up for VicTube. The upcoming year for Georgia is really showing the difference of the direction that Georgia has taken and Alabama has taken. How can Georgia have this many quality quarterbacks sitting in the locker room and Alabama have none?
Yeah, I mean,
none.
How are they not able to pull one of them? I mean, we all as Georgia fans have been sitting here like, I remember, what was it, last year? Like, when is Carson Beck going to transfer? We know he's going to transfer. And then it was like, when's Gunnar I mean, when's Brock Vandagriff going to transfer? We know what's going to happen. And now we're saying, when's Gunner going to transfer? We know what's going to happen. How has Alabama not been able to pull any of those guys? You know, they had to go and grab the dude from Notre Dame or whatever his name is. I can't remember, Tyler or something or another.
Yeah,
they pulled the guy from Notre Dame, and so you know, you would think they would have been able to pull one of the Georgia quarterbacks. I mean, it shouldn't be that hard to go in and you know, start talking sweet nothings to them as the Crimson Tide. I mean, they would immediately start for them, any of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you go back and you look in 2022, they got Emmanuel Henderson. Excuse me, sorry, my mistake. The wrong button here. I done messed up, Aaron. So, looking at their 2023 class, they offered 5-star Arch Manning. Didn't get him. Nico, I'm going to leave you alone. 5-star goes to Tennessee. Jackson Arnold, 5-star, goes to Oklahoma. Malachi Nelson, 5-star, goes to USC. And all of the 5-star quarterbacks they offered turned them down flat. One of them picked Tennessee over Alabama. Think about that. A 5-star quarterback picked Tennessee over Alabama. That is crazy.
You know why? Offensive line, offensive coordinator turnover. That's all it's been against Alabama.
Well, they offered Eli Holstein. He signed. He's a 4-star. And Dylan Lonergan. He's a 4-star that he signed. But neither one of those guys are ready. Neither one of those guys are ready. So let me look up 2022. So let's see. This is just their offers. They got Ty Simpson, but I haven't seen much out of him. And then all their other offers, they didn't get a single person that they offered. They didn't get none of those.
Tennessee is going to draw up an offense to make the quarterback look good. That's for sure. So,
yeah.
Dude, hey, Brett, I don't know about you, man, but when we travel to Tennessee, that game's going to be scary.
No, it's not.
I mean,
and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Yeah, y'all can write it down right now.
All right.
That may be Georgia's most difficult opponent in the regular season because of the crowd effect.
Mm-hmm.
But that is not the first time Georgia has played in an extremely loud crowd. It is not the first time Georgia will overcome being at Neyland Stadium. Every time we go up there, that place is loud. And
no, but I'm saying,
about,
like,
go ahead.
We have never been in that environment. Sure, we've been to Tennessee, but we've never been in the Tennessee that they are right now. A 10-win Tennessee team. We've always traveled up there, and they've been in like a 7-6 win team. But when they got to like 9-10 win games, it's going to be scary when we travel up there.
Well, let me tell you why it's not going to be scary.
Sorry, I had a couple of non-Bud Lights. Let's just say that.
So let me ask you a question.
Sure. Yeah.
If you had to pick out just three quarterbacks you didn't want to play against last year, who would they be? Not counting Georgia. Three quarterbacks Georgia play against. Yeah.
Last year?
Yeah.
Caleb Williams.
Okay.
The boy from Tennessee. What was his name?
Hendon Hooker.
And
CJ Stroud, right?
CJ Stroud, yeah.
Okay.
And I would love to play against that Colt boy. Who's he play for now? The Colts? The Florida boy?
Oh, Anthony Richardson. Yeah.
Yeah, that boy. Yeah.
So here's the thing. What's up, Gil? So here's the thing, right? What's up, Crimson Brave? They couldn't beat Georgia with Hendon Hooker. They ain't got a prayer in hell with Joe Milton. Excuse my language.
I have an interesting take on that.
Yeah, but Rhodes at home. I mean,
I think
it's gonna be hard.
I don't know that. I mean, that game is late in the season. I don't know that Tennessee's not rolling in that game with 1 or 2 losses, and Georgia fans are going to pick off Tennessee tickets and that game not be as loud against Georgia as possible. I mean, Tennessee's got to beat Florida. They got to play Florida, South Carolina, and Alabama before they get to Georgia. So,
it's going to be a hard game. It's at Ole Miss.
So
there are only 2 games. That's the only 2 games that I'm worried about. I'm not worried, super worried about them, but at Tennessee and at home at Ole Miss.
I'm gonna give you guys a hot take right now. Right now. And you ain't ready for it.
Yeah.
They could easily, in my opinion, have 4 losses by the time they get to Georgia.
Who, Ole Miss?
Huh?
Ole Miss?
No, Tennessee. Tennessee could have 4 losses by the time they play Georgia.
Oh, we play at Tennessee.
I know we do, but I'm just talking about by the time they get to us in their schedule.
If Tennessee has 3 or 4 losses by the time they play Georgia, that stadium's gonna be half full of Georgia fans.
Yeah, their fans will give up.
They're gonna sell their tickets.
That's the thing about the dog. The Dog's fan faithful, man. We travel.
They're already, even if Tennessee rolls into that game undefeated, there's going to be Georgia players that are going to be buying Tennessee tickets. 100%.
And here's what I think is going to happen.
Now, it'll still be loud as hell against Georgia. Don't get me wrong.
It's going to be loud, but here's what I think. I think that they're going to be looking at they're going to win against Virginia. They're going to win against Austin Peay. They'll probably win against Florida. I'm real curious as to what's going to happen with South Carolina. Then you got to turn around the next week and play, or they get a bye week. Then they got to play Texas A&M. I'd be interested to see what they got to happen. And then they're going to play Alabama.
2-2.
Then they got to play Kentucky. Kentucky, for some reason, man, sometimes they will surprise the hell out of you. I'm not counting on that. But I'm telling you, even if they split this gap, they still got 2 losses.
Yeah.
And then if Georgia is undefeated, and then you get Georgia the 3rd week in November, Georgia's going to just be getting ramped up.
The Tennessee schedule? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm looking at Tennessee's schedule.
Oh shit! They're 3-5, 3-3 at best.
That's what I'm saying.
The thing you got to count on is the thing that you got to look at is what they did last year was kind of an anomaly. I'll just be honest with you. And there were a couple of games there they could have should have lost. I mean, they only beat Florida by 5 points. Look how bad Florida was last year. I mean, you lost by almost 30 points to South Carolina. It took you overtime to beat Pitt. I mean, by the time they got to Georgia in their schedule, they easily could have. They only beat Alabama by 3 points, and that was a gift. So I don't know, man. I feel like Alabama last year was not that great, and I think their record reflects it. And they barely edged off Alabama, and then they go out there and just beat the bloody fire out of Kentucky, and then they turn and play Georgia, and Georgia absolutely stonewalls them. They couldn't do anything against Georgia. So I'm not, and that was with Hendon Hooker, which they thought was one of the greatest things since sliced bread, and Georgia goes out there and humiliates them. So I'm not concerned at all because Joe Milton is nowhere near the quarterback of what Hendon Hooker was. And it took Hendon Hooker 3 or 4 years of playtime to get there. So no, it's a gimmick offense, just like the triple option was a gimmick offense, in my opinion. And I think Georgia's got it figured out. I think Kirby Smart coaching staff's got it figured out. And I don't care how loud the stadium is. I think that Georgia's defense is going to be just as good or better than it was last year. And I think you're going to see a similar event.
Yeah, I think this – I know we haven't seen, a whole lot of Carson Beck, but we've seen quite a bit. But not, we haven't seen him run an entire offense, I guess, from start to finish. But all the data seems to point that he is a better quarterback than Stetson Bennett. Then this schedule is easier than last year. And so it's kind of strange. Like you want, if we talk about the Tennessee game, it's definitely not going to be as big of a game. I don't think Tennessee makes it to that game undefeated. Their quarterback is not Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker came into last year, with a lot of people talking about him. There's nobody really talking about Tennessee's quarterback this year. So I mean, I think Georgia is going to have a better quarterback and play a weaker schedule than last year when we won a national championship. So I mean, I'm not any more concerned about any of these games that are on our schedule this year than anything I saw last year.
Right.
And and I don't, I think me and you talked about going into the Tennessee game. Everybody was hyped up about the Tennessee game, but like if you watch on paper, I mean, Georgia had that game. I mean, if you looked at everything, Georgia should have won that game. It shouldn't have surprised anybody what happened on the field if you really watched both teams play last year. I mean, you even listened to Danny Ainge. I know he talked a lot of crap last year leading up to that game, but one of the things that you can find a record of is him talking about how terrible Hendon Hooker is. He wanted Hendon Hooker to not start and for Milton to start. He was not a believer in Hendon Hooker because he actually watched him try to complete passes. And if you go back and watch Hendon Hooker, I'm going to go on record. I hope the kid succeeds, but in the NFL, but I've not ever been impressed with Hendon Hooker. His statistics are just inflated by hitting guys that have nobody within 10 yards of him when they catch the ball. You go back and look at the Georgia game when he was actually getting some heat on him and actually having to throw the covered receiver. He was throwing the ball over their head. He was throwing. I mean, he was not. If he had any heat on him or had a covered receiver, he was not accurate.
Well, let me throw something else. Let me throw something else at you too, right? So Joe Milton III has been at Tennessee for the past couple of years, but before that he was at Michigan. Okay, so he played in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. This guy is going on his 6th year. This will be his 6th year in college football. And it has taken him this long to become the starter. This tells you two things. Number one, Tennessee is woefully unprepared at the quarterback situation. Woefully unprepared. He has thrown for less than 300 attempts in his entire career in 6 years. That's not a lot. And you're gonna set him out there against the back-to-back defending national champions, who not only are one of the best college football teams in the SEC, they're the best in the country. And this guy couldn't make a starting job in 6 years. I think this guy's going to get out there and get deer in the headlights in a big way. This will be the biggest game of his life.
Hey, but he did beat Clemson in that bowl game.
What?
And he showed real potential.
He played against, you talking about Clemson last year?
No, this bowl game that he just played.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just playing devil's advocate, but he played good.
No, I think he'll be fine because I think any quarterback that Tennessee puts in their program is going to do just fine.
Yeah, because they have a gimmick offense, but not just because he played good against Clemson. Like just Clemson gave up. If Clemson doesn't make a bowl the playoffs, they just give up. That's the thing about Clemson.
That's true.
That's a product of the ACC environment, which is why they want to leave.
No, I think
you're damn right.
I think that's Dabo, man.
I think Dabo is.
I think that is representative of his mentality.
Yeah,
right there, bro.
I'm gonna take my toys and go home because this season's over.
Hey boys, I do have to get up at 6, so I'll talk to y'all boys later. Okay, thanks, big dog.
Right,
you're welcome, brother. I'll call you at 5:30 when I get up.
Yeah, okay, I got you, man.
Take it easy, brother.
Yeah, boys.
So, there is since we're talking about the quarterback situation, I don't have a lot of faith in Joe Milton. And if somebody doesn't talk about how old this guy is before that we go any further, that's everybody talked about how old Stetson Bennett was. Oh, Stetson Bennett, Joe Milton just as old with less experience. So I don't think that there's a lot to be worried about there. I don't think that this is a guy that could carry his team, especially against somebody like Georgia. If you want to be a rock star quarterback and compete against Georgia, then you've got to be able to be of the caliber that CJ Stroud was, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Tennessee last year was a flash in the pan. That's just my opinion.
I do too.
I really do think that.
Well, Cool Breeze is asking, do you think they won't switch up QBs if Milton struggles? No, because they don't have a quarterback that's better than he is, and he's going to run the same program. And that program, which is try to hurry up and go as fast as you possibly can, is going to catch a lot of teams off guard because they're undisciplined. But it doesn't work against well-disciplined teams like Georgia. I think the reason they done so well last year against Alabama is because Alabama has gotten a little bit of this entitlement syndrome. Nico, I'm going to leave you alone. He may be coming in, but he's not ready. I mean, that would be like me saying Dylan Raiola is ready. I mean, it's just it's not going to work out that way, man. I mean, here's the problem that you run into when you put in an unexperienced quarterback into a highly volatile situation where he is absolutely, number one, overwhelmed by the situation, number two, out talented at every position just about, and out coached. You run the risk of making this guy so gun shy that he doesn't want to play college football ever again. Because Kirby Smart and crew, they want to break you. They want to bend you over and break you in half. That's the way. If you've ever listened to any of Kirby's locker room talk, that's what he wants to do. A deep pass rush rotation eats that Tennessee offensive line. Georgia, Dylan is 2024, Nico's 2023. I mean, I'm sure he'll have some reps, yeah, but I wouldn't put as good as Georgia's offensive line is, which is going to be one of the best in the country. I wouldn't throw Gunnar Stockton in there against Ohio State or even against the Tennessee. I wouldn't do that. It's a recipe for disaster.
I mean, projecting what's going to happen in that Tennessee game is hard right now because, again, I think, it's towards the end of the season. So, I mean, that'll definitely be something we can speculate a little bit later on once the season starts and we see how he does, how Milton does play, because I think he'll do just fine. I mean, again, I think anybody in that type of offense is going to put up good numbers. When you go fast, catch teams off guard, run slants over the middle, run these schemes that get your your number one read wide open. You don't really force the quarterback to do any type of searching, any kind of checkdowns, or read the defense any kind of way. I mean, he'll be able to get back and get the ball out and put up decent numbers, and that'll work for most people they play. They're going to run into a problem with it anytime they face somebody that's got fast secondary, and they're going to run into that at Alabama. They're going to run into that at Georgia, probably at Texas A&M as well. So I think it's very possible that they could roll into the Georgia game with a loss or two, and that game not be as big as everybody's hoping it's going to be. Because, I mean, you look at Georgia's schedule right now, that's the only game that really jumps out at you, right? I mean, I know some people are talking about Ole Miss, but really? I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, maybe, I guess. But that's the only game that really jumps out at you, and I'm not real sure that game is going to be as big as people are thinking it's going to be by the time we actually get to it.
I think that if we were
Georgia has a loss, I hope it's not because of that. But I think I really do think Tennessee may have a little sophomore struggle. So
I think that he's going to do okay. I think he's going to do fine against most teams. But the best way that I can correlate that would be to point out that there were many seasons where Georgia Tech was the #1 rushing team in the country. They had phenomenal rushing stats, yards per carry, all this other stuff. But the one row that they couldn't put the number in was the win column. So you can go out there and you can execute a good plan. But if you don't win the right games, it's not really going to matter.
Yeah,
can't throw a freshman to the wolves without proper protection targets. Tennessee can't run the ball effectively, so it's a stretch to believe Nico can shoulder an entire offense. I think that's pretty accurate. I think that he'll be a good quarterback in time? Absolutely. I think you give him 2 or 3 years, he's something to talk about. He's something to have a real legitimate conversation over. But it is extremely rare to see a quarterback come in as a true freshman and even perform to expectations. I think Trevor Lawrence is about the only one that I can remember that did it. Yeah. No, I don't think it's inconceivable that UGA loses to Tennessee. Yeah. I don't. We still have yet to figure out how good or bad Carson Beck is. We know he looks good, but how does that translate to being on the field? Yeah. But that same thing also applies to Tennessee. So
I think you take this team. I know in college football, every team every year is different because you just have such a huge turnover. But, and this is something that, that Saban talked about a lot, and I truly believe it, is that, talking about is it conceivable that UGA loses to Tennessee? I don't think it's inconceivable that UGA loses to anybody coming up this season. I mean, you take a team that just won 2 national championships in a row, there is some complacency that creeps in. It's human nature. And so that's Kirby's job, the coaching staff's job, to coach that out and to make these guys want to outperform the guys before them and make their own legacy and, yada, yada, yada. But the reality is that, if you're a player on the Georgia Bulldog team, you kind of are flexing and walking around with your shoulders up and that can get you tripped sometimes. So,
look at that Missouri game. Case in point, Missouri.
Yeah, so, I don't take any of these games lightly. I think Georgia could absolutely lose any game on its schedule going into it. But
Tennessee,
I'm not concerned about Tennessee any more than I am, say, Ole Miss.
Well, Tennessee walked into they beat Missouri 66-24, and then they walked into South Carolina and got skull drugged.
Yeah,
63-38, and nobody in recent history has put that many points on Tennessee. So that brings to point how many games you play you think you're going to win. I think it's going to be a walk in the park. That's not necessarily the case, Georgia included. Georgia had an opportunity last year to throw away a game, and we almost did.
Well, I mean, if you want to draw comparisons between Kirby and Mark Richt, I think that's your difference right there, right? I mean, Mark Richt had some fantastic teams and some fantastic talent. If you look back at some of the teams we put on the field, I mean, you go back to that like 2012, 2011, 2012, 2013 era, and you look at some of the guys that Rick had, it's crazy. It's crazy amount of talent that he had. And back then when me and you used to talk about college football, that was the moment that broke me with Rick. If you can't win the national championship with this roster, especially looking back on what we see now, like if you can't win with this roster, it's not going to happen. And so you compare that with what Kirby has done. Yeah, Kirby has even better studs, But you run into the same challenges though, right? I mean, we had games this past year where it was a struggle. It wasn't easy. I mean, you had the Missouri game. You had
Kent State.
yeah,
I mean, honestly.
exactly. That's what I'm trying to think about. You had those games. Those are games that in the Mark Richt era, that team loses those games.
Sure.
That's not saying anything bad about Mark Richt. That's just the mentality. Kirby. I mean, we've all heard the leaked audio from the locker room. Kirby's a killer, man. He is, and Mark Richt is not. Mark Richt is not. Mark Richt's a great man. You would never hear the speeches that Kirby gives. You would never hear that come out of Mark Richt's mouth. And so that's the difference. That's the step up. That's the thing that we used to always talk about, is that Mark Richt dug this program out, from the grave, built it, and got it to the mountaintop. He just couldn't push it over.
Yeah.
And Kirby brought in, he took what Mark Richt built, improved it, and gave it a killer mentality. And that is the challenge that the coaching staff has, is to keep that through success, keep it. And, and that's what made Saban great. Saban was able to do that. I mean, you go back and look over the years, I mean, they just continue to be relevant ever since he's gotten there. And so Georgia's just got to do that. I think we will. I think that's one of the things that's different. I think Kirby knows how to get into those guys. And I mean, you've heard Nolan Smith, some of the stuff that he said, I mean, that dude loves Georgia. I mean, you could tell he was coached to love. I mean, I know he loved the program going in, but he loved the program.
Yeah.
And you talk, they did those skull sessions or whatever, where they would get the guys in there and they created like a brotherhood. They created a team mentality outside of football, and those guys loved each other. And so you continue that and you build that, and it's that's how you dig yourself out of those games that are tough and you win instead of lose.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love about Kirby and his mentality, is he's got that. He's figured it out.
Well, he's got a lot of passion. I mean, a lot of passion. And he wants people to succeed for their own benefit. And he gets them to understand that the way they succeed is by helping everyone else succeed. And that's difficult to do. Great leaders do it easily. Kirby Smart's one of those guys. Now, to address what Coolbree said, he goes, these first year starters now are more prepared to take over Lamar Jackson, Johnny Manziel, James Winston, all freshmen. You're right, but I'm gonna be honest with you. The fact that you can name them tells you how rare it is, because there's 132 teams. Each team's got 3 or 4 or 5 players, and it's exceedingly rare to have a quarterback start as a freshman, and just start as a freshman, never mind do well. So to me, when I look up and I see that I can name guys that do it. Yeah. I can also name receivers that have caught for 1,000 yards, but there's not a lot.
Usually when a freshman starts as a quarterback, it's because of a bad situation the prior year with your quarterback, or a bad situation leading into that guy starting, or an injury. Yeah, exactly. It usually is a bad situation that leads to a freshman starting.
If a freshman is starting, there's a couple of things going on. One is the coach is screwed up. Number 2, somebody quit the team. There's an injury, or somebody has royally made a mistake in a game so much to the point that they get pulled. If your game plan as a head coach is to roll out a freshman onto the field and be like, we're going to start this guy every year, that's a bad plan. That's a bad plan.
I mean, you certainly would like to have some time to get him, to get him ready and get him in the program. And, I mean, it's not ideal to start a freshman quarterback in college. That's for sure. I mean, you're seeing a lot more early enrollees nowadays, and with the early signing period, it's a lot easier to get these guys on campus in January and then be able to start, I guess, as a freshman. Of course, I guess they would still be considered a true freshman at that point, but your academic freshman year, it's a lot easier to see for that to happen nowadays with the early signing period. But But yeah, ideally you got a situation where you kind of keep it, you can kind of roll into your quarterbacks and keep, redshirt a guy, let him run the program, and then let him take over and be comfortable. I mean, you look at Carson. I mean, by his own words, he wasn't ready, and he'd been in the program for 2 years, leading into that opportunity, and he was self-aware enough to say it.
And one of the things that you find is that if you listen to when these players make these statements, the honest statements, the ones that's not coach speak or just talking to the media, they will tell you that the transition between high school and college is enormous. When you're talking about becoming a quarterback, you're in charge of reading the defense, getting the plays, getting everybody online. I mean, there is so much that's involved with being a quarterback on that field. If you don't have all of that put together, it shows very quickly, because you're playing against guys on the other side that have been playing 2, 3, and 4 years. They've been there, done this before at this level. And then your job is to go out there as a true freshman and just run the show. That's tough, man. That's really, really tough.
There's definitely guys that do. I mean, like you said, Jameis Winston. I mean, these guys are. I mean, there are guys that can come in as freshmen and they're just good, right? They're just good enough to go out there and kind of take over a game. And if you look at it, it's usually, from a quarterback perspective, it's usually the guys that are able to run, right? I mean, you look back, like even the guys Cool Breeze mentioned, Jameis Winston, Johnny Manziel, Lamar Jackson. I think Tebow started as a freshman. You look at all these guys, it's the ability to scramble and also being athletic, very athletic and big. I don't think Johnny Manziel was that big, but Lamar Jackson, Jameis Winston Tebow's huge. I mean, those guys were talented enough and big enough that they can just run over people or run by people. I mean, they were not necessarily good enough, but big enough and physical enough to just be out there and get it done. They didn't really require them to throw to have great arms. I mean, look at Tebow, look at Johnny Manziel.
Yeah. So Edward Branscombe says, "What does it mean? It means your dreams are over, Florida, Tennessee, and maybe even Bama." Well, I think Florida's dreams are long gone. That program's in the ditch. I think that Tennessee has Tennessee has their version of Mark Richt. That's what I think has happened. I think that they have a good coach who's going to win them 8, 9, 10 games a season, and every now and then he's going to get really close. But I think the majority of the time he's going to get bodied when you get to the latter tiers of the college football playoff. I think that anytime you're running a gimmick offense, it's just a matter of time until somebody figures it out, and then you're done. Chip Kelly is a prime example. Chip Kelly was running a hurry-up offense out in Oregon. He was absolutely killing everybody with it, and then they figured out how to beat it. So Cool Breeze is right. The offense, you're giving a read. It's plug and play. They run the same type of offense as OSU and the San Francisco 49ers, where it's easy read and throw.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it is. But when you start playing against elite defenses like Georgia, that's not going to work. And it's never going to work. If you can't generate offense against an elite defense, you're just not going to get there. Ohio State done an outstanding job of that. And CJ Stroud, I will tell you right now, I think is probably one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen play. I'd probably put him second to maybe Joe Burrow. The guy was just absolutely incredible. He lit up one of the best defenses in college football I've ever seen and did it effortlessly. If that guy can't make you believe that a perfectly thrown ball is indefensible, I don't know who will. Joe Burrow will be another example. But
yeah, I think JT Stroud has the best pro career of any of the quarterbacks that went this past cycle.
I agree. Mr. Hart says, BDB, what's the odds Georgia trends up with Bobo at the reins on offense? Trends up? Do you mean
score more points, maybe?
Or hold, I'm not turns up, maybe. I don't know. I think that Mike Bobo, if you go back and you look at Mike Bobo when he coached Georgia before, He was averaging almost like 40 points a game back then.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
recruiting. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I do think. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's been one of Bobo's strengths.
Yeah, he's an
forever.
outstanding recruiter. If you go back and look at the players he's recruited, there's no doubt. And I think that Dylan Raiola is part of that crowd.
I was going to say, we've seen it already. We just saw it happen. Yeah, for sure.
One of the things that I will point out is that UGA has an outstanding recruiting program. And as long as they continue recruiting like they are, and you have Kirby Smart at the helm, guys like Mike Bobo and Will Muschamp on your roster are never going to hurt you. Never going to hurt you. Look at how good Bobo was back when he played for Mark Richt, and look at what he had to overcome to be able to score 40 points a game back then. Georgia's roster is 10 times as good now as it was then. You're going to hand him all those offensive weapons. I think that was one of the reasons why Todd Monken wasn't like, I'm not really concerned that Todd Monken left. I love Todd Monken. Don't get me wrong. I'd take him in a heartbeat. But if you told me that I had to lose him, I'd be like, golly, who's going to be close to that guy? I think Mike Bobo is about as close as you can get. So I'm good with it. Whiteouts come in like before you dominate. Yeah, well, Georgia's not having a problem dominating right now. So I agree. Well, we're going on about an hour and a half here. Is there anything else you wanted to cover, Keith?
No, I think that's it, man. I think we covered all the hot topics in the off season. It's not too much to talk about.
I'm sure there'll be some more. I'm surprised we get an hour and a half.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. This last half of the year leading into the early signing period in December. I think Dylan's going to pull some more guys. I think it's going to be fun to be a Dog fan.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot. And you guys can go ahead and write it down now. You're going to see a lot. You're going to see the first domino has fallen, and it has already leaned up against the second domino in the set. And if that domino will go ahead and fall, you will see Georgia will run out of scholarships quickly. You will see players enter the transfer portal, and you go, why did he enter the transfer portal? Well, it's going to be because they asked him to give up a scholarship. So they got to make room.
I would follow Dylan Raiola and Jeremiah Smith Jr. on Twitter and just see, just watch and see if you see any communications, any reaching out.
Instagram too.
Yeah, exactly.
Those guys
Stay in
on Instagram.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that's interesting about today's world. I mean, much different from when we went to school, is these recruits, like these guys know each other. I mean, with social media and all these camps that they go to, like, even across the country, they know each other. They're friends. They got each other's number. They're texting. I mean, it's a much more connected world than it was, whenever we were in school.
Well, not only that, let me throw this out there. For those of you who don't know, we kind of touched on it earlier. Dylan coming to UGA has been known to certain people for 3 to 4 weeks now. And he was actually going to put out a statement a while back at midnight, and then decided not to do it, decided that he was going to do it during the day and put it out that way. So there's a lot of people that have known, and I can guarantee you that Jeremiah Smith probably knew.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
And so that probably has allowed him to start to get his ducks in a row. Yeah. Well, that's all I got time for tonight. Mr. Carr, you got anything else there?
No, I'm good. I just threw the link to the YouTube video with Raiola mic'd up, where he drops the statement about "Go Dogs." It's always been dogs. That's just an interesting statement.
Yeah, just very interesting. We'll get you to hang around here for a second, Keith. I want to thank everybody who showed up tonight. Cool Breeze, really appreciate you being here, sir. One of our resident members, Alex MLD, thank you so much for being here, sir. Yo Lawson Hoghead, Texas Rocks, Whipmaster Hart, what a great name that is. Let's see who else we have earlier in the show. Darius Senior, get your name in now. VicTube, Crimson Brave, and Alex MLD, and there was a few others in there, but I'm not going all the way back. Really appreciate you guys being on. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Got more videos coming up for you guys real soon. Help me beat the YouTube algorithm. Help me get to 100 bazillion million subscribers and independently, financially, and emotionally wealthy. I appreciate you guys. Have a great day. God bless. Go Dogs. Oh, and it's always been Dogs.